As a leader in the technology field, Anne champions equality and works to create belonging for underrepresented groups. Her determination and passion gets results from serving as the first engineer at a startup to a leap of faith move to Japan to build her life, even though she hadn't found a job yet. And she grew up in Montana, USA, and enjoys spending time in nature. So in her spare time, Anne studies Japanese painting, um, calligraphy, and indigo dyeing. And she currently works as a software engineer at Mercari, Japan. So, Anne, I will go to pass it over to you. I'm really excited for your talk on creative coding to inspire. So, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for the lovely introduction, Sapphire. Yeah, I'm Anne. I'm actually in Mercari, based in Japan, working on the U.S. product. It's a little funny, but it's fun. Let me get into my talk. And I have to advance the slides here. Okay. So a little bit about me. I guess Sapphire read my bio, but I want to emphasize that I've been doing art, math, and combining math and computer science and art for a long time. In fact, when I was in college, I majored in 3 different things, and it took me a while. It took me 5 years, but I just really liked studying different areas. When I went to grad school, I got a master's degree in computer science. And though I work in a tech job still, one of my primary reasons for moving to Japan is because the art culture here is very deep. So in this talk, I wanted to highlight the work of other creators and artists. So wherever possible, I have reached out to them and obtained their permission. So please follow and support these people. It's a really cool group. And gotta use the little, sorry, the slide button here. I'm also there's a couple things that I just have to share under the fair use statement, which I'll actually talk about later in the talk. But under US law, this talk is for teaching purposes. This conference is international, but Women Who Code is based in the US. So yeah, using this and the citation we're trying to provide citations where possible. So what will this talk be about? The focus areas are: what is creative coding? Why should we do it? And then we'll go into 10 prompts we can use in our projects. And then at the end, there will be a question and answer. So first of all, what is creative coding? What if I can't draw? What if I don't know JavaScript? What if I don't know artists? Can I still do it? Okay, let's be honest with JavaScript. Lots of people do JavaScript without knowing JavaScript. So you don't need to know JavaScript, and it's not just front end. What is art? That's a question for another talk. It doesn't matter. I want to say that anyone can do this. And the goal of it is to create something expressive instead of something functional. This is how Wikipedia describes it. I like to keep a pretty loose definition. I think it's coding adjacent as well as with coding, but it could be things where you're producing art with code. It could be making, images, music, video, immersive experiences. You could be using an artistic medium to teach about coding. You could be doing hardware-related things where you're sort of coding, but you're maybe soldering too. I think of it more as a mindset. You're using whimsy, humor, and creativity. You're using both your left and right brain at the same time. So it's not a particular programming language. There's no required skills, just an open mind and curiosity. It's also a journey that I've sort of named in the last year, and I've been doing these sessions with Women Who Code Tokyo, but they're online, so anyone can join. But I think in different parts of my career, I've done creative things with coding. But I'm honestly still pretty new and learning what it is. And so I hope you'll join me tonight or whatever time of day this is for you, and let's explore together. So why should we do it? One idea is you want to make a portfolio project. And while there's plenty of calculators and Twitter clones and, basic calendars and stuff out there, what if you made something that really stood out? So like, for instance, one project is I made a 16th century style Japanese clock, and it works like a mechanical clock does. And it tells the time in the way that they did, where the hours change depending on the length of the day. So you can do something that's like really one of a kind. Another reason is overcome boredom. We often have jobs that are, I'm very grateful for my job. And sometimes I have to do something like update a database. And it's not the most exciting thing I've done in my life, but that's okay. Or maybe we have to choose a programming language that works for the team rather than what's my passion. That's okay. Our jobs don't always have to be perfectly exciting or perfectly, our passion. But it is good if, you really have kind of a weird, wild idea. You can do it on a solo project and have free artistic control. And yeah, maybe no one's going to pay me to make an AI to name Japanese sodas, but it entertains me and it makes me laugh. So that's why I like to do creative coding. Also, cross-disciplinary work is another great reason. Maybe you're excited about biology or music, or you really like cooking and you want to incorporate that into code or into software, or you want to use, data science to calculate something. So it's a really great way to bridge disciplines. So next, I'll get into 10 prompts for creative coding. I invite you to try these at home. And if you want company, check out the hashtag creative coding channel inside the Women Who Code Slack, because we've been sharing a lot of stuff there. I've even been writing a Git book that I'll link to at the end of the talk, and doing sessions basically monthly where we do different prompts. But I'm going to just list a bunch of prompts tonight, and then you can kind of read more in detail later. So the first one is called "Good Artists Borrow, Great Artists Steal." This quote comes from Steve Jobs, but Steve Jobs may have been stealing this quote from Pablo Picasso, who may have been rephrasing Igor Stravinsky, who said, "Lesser artists borrow, great artists steal." But this might not even be original, because this is possibly a rephrase of T.S. Eliot, who said, "Immature poets imitate, mature poets steal. Bad poets deface what they take, and good poets make into something better, or at least something different. The good poet welds his theft into a whole of feeling which is unique, utterly different than from what it is torn." And this series of quotes is from the Utah Valley University Art Department, who actually note that this is an example of stealing all the way to like several layers of stealing. So it's very interesting about where artists draw inspiration. What is the origin of ideas? So what does this mean in code? Perhaps we take something that's known in the world. So in January of this year, this game Wordle became super popular, and lots of people started making different versions of it or interpretations of it. I saw Japanese language Wordles with katakana and kanji, the Japanese letter systems. I saw a really cool one that took the Wordle square output and output it into words, so for accessibility, so that someone who is blind or visually impaired could understand what the letters were at each stage. And personally, I worked on one where I wrote a Wordle clone in Golang, so it just works in the terminal. So it uses ASCII and a series of emoji squares to tell you if your letter's right. And it prints out a little keyboard using the terminal. Now, stealing is a complicated word. Well, it's a word that certainly evokes some emotions, because stealing can be wrong and can be bad. So what do we mean by stealing? Like, when is it okay? We're part of a global organization, a nonprofit, and we're trying to be a force for good in the world. So I'm not trying to tell you to go out there and just take whatever you want. There are ethical ways of stealing. So here are some things to consider. There are open source licenses that give you permission to take and reuse stuff. So the MIT license is an example of a very permissible license that lets you do things as long as you cite the sources. There are sometimes websites like Glitch that let you remix and reinterpret people's code. There are laws in the US, 2 laws that are very helpful in this situation. The fair use, I use the fair use doctrine at the beginning of this, because Some of the things I'm sharing in this talk are for scholarly use. It's okay for me to comment on them. Another one is parody law, which if for people who watch the American show Saturday Night Live, you might see that they make fun of brands or something. Well, this comedy show has a reputation for making parody of different things. So you can have a, antibacterial hamburger helper. They can make fun of that and use that trademark. Check with your own country and your own jurisdiction's laws, but there are ways you can borrow things. Another principle is to change things enough and make it your own. Make sure you're bringing something genuinely new and not just ripping something off. The third point is to consider power dynamics, such as cultural appropriation. Do you have more or less social standing than the party you're taking things from? Are you part of a large corporation and taking something from a small individual creator? Or, there's no one size fits all answer, but these are some guidelines that can help you make a good choice. Next prompt is Css Art. I really recommend checking out CodePen.io to get inspired here. Here's an example of this camera picture was made in full CSS, and it was made by Cassidy Williams or Cassidoo. Actually, if you see the real link, it kind of tilts and the little flash triggers. It's really cool. You can start with simple things, building up shapes with circles, squares, arcs, doing different colors and transparency, and build things that, you feel like you can pick this up with the shadow. So it's really incredible what people can build. Just using HTML and CSS. Third prompt is to get creative with your developer tooling. We're using our computers every day, and why not make it your own? Consider customizing your terminal, IDE, or keyboard. Although I'll say the keyboard one, that's an expensive hobby, so choose wisely. But customizing the terminal is free, and I was inspired by a creator named Sally Lay, who helped me kind of come up with my own terminal keyboard. So I use a Mac. So I used iTerm 2, which gives more extensible colors beyond the default terminal. So I can set a nice color scheme. I'm using Z Shell. So I used Oh My ZSH, the custom theme, and I tweaked it a little bit to give it this like dongo feel, which is it's a snack food in Japan. They're these nice, they're sometimes, this pink, white, green color. That's kind of fun in spring. So this is what it looks like when I log into my terminal. It says, hello, Anne. And it maybe shows little sparkles or different things, depending on if I'm in a Git repository or if my last command succeeded or failed. So it's super fun. And you can, check out the ZHS themes. You can either install one someone else made or make your own. Prompt number 4 is to use emoji. So one of my favorite projects for this is darksky.com. This is like a really good weather service. They have a weather map that's just made out of emoji. And so you can see the weather recently in Tokyo has been pretty ganky, pretty good. And in later in summer, they'll get a little more, these kind of sad faces or stressful faces as we get into the notoriously hot summer. There are a couple open source emoji libraries, so those are good to use. So Twitter's emoji set are open source and OpenMoji. So these can be tools that you can use freely. Prompt number 5 is to use artificial intelligence, but instead of using it to solve a problem, do it for hijinks. Train a neural net to do something unexpected. So Janelle Shane, this is one of my favorite projects. She fed a neural network the Sherwin-Williams paint catalog with the colors, the names, and the colors in the RGB codes, and basically had it generate new names. People professionally name paint. So she was like, what if an AI did it? I think my favorite one is still Light of Blast, but these are it's just delightful. And she runs a whole blog called AI Weirdness that's full of stuff like this. So please check it out. It's very good. Prompt number 6 is to use the processing framework. Processing is a programming language and framework for visual artists. It's been around since 2001. It's free and open source. You can download it. There's lots of different tools. It's just like a blank canvas. You can make all sorts of stuff with it. But one thing when you're working with code is you can do really mathematical stuff. So I was really inspired by this Penrose tile generation. And Penrose tiles are kind of cool because they're an aperiodic pattern. So it's kind of like patterns, but it's never like self-similar. It's always changing infinitely. But it has this sort of order to it. So it's really neat to see this sort of stuff that you can do when you use code as your drawing implement. Prompt number 7 is to use color. So we've all probably played with color in the physical world on paper, and maybe you learned the primary colors as red, blue, yellow. With light, the primary colors change a little bit because it just color theory is complex, and I'm still learning a lot about it. But I've been trying to document some things on this GitHub page. But there are many different ways of representing color on a computer screen. And I'll just go over 2 of the systems. So there's one called red, blue, green, and it's additive. Why is it called additive? Well, when we add all 3 of them together, we get white, which is pure light. And then the other one, the subtractive system, is Cmyk. That K stands for key or black. It comes from the printing world, which is usually using cyan, magenta, yellow ink, and then a black layer or a key image to kind of lock it all together. So historically, this is how newspapers are printed, or a lot of different, hey, you buy a printer cartridge, you've got a full color printer, you've probably got magenta, cyan, yellow, and black. And subtractive, when you add them all together, you get black, which is the absence of light. So that's just 2 systems. There's hue, saturation, brightness. There's a bunch of other different ways and color systems. And it gets really technical and interesting. But you can do a lot of things with color. I mean, we're no longer on those, monochromatic screens. Maybe you're still on a device that's monochromatic. But yeah, one thing I did with color, Sapphire mentioned in my intro that I like Japanese painting. And I had been going to the paint store to buy ground mineral pigments. And I noticed I had been buying the same color more than once, which is not the best use of my money. So I decided to make a little project to make sure I know which paint colors I own. And so it's kind of a very simple Django website with a front end that looks like it's from the 90s, but it does what I needed to do, and it lists all the colors with the kanji name. And then I have the kanji name at the top, and then I have the romaji, which is how do I pronounce it in English, or how I write it in Roman characters. Then the type of pigment, which is Shin Iwa Enago, which means artificial mineral pigment. If it were the real one, if I were a professional artist and I used the real one, it would be made of azurite and malachite, but I'm not paying for that yet. And then the hex code of the approximate color and what are the grain sizes, basically how coarse is the pigment. Notice the finer ones, the higher number are more light. And so this just helps me track my paints. Fun fact, if you read Chinese characters or Japanese characters, there's a lot of mouse grays in Japanese color theory. So there's a couple Nezumi Iro, there's like a rock mouse, and there's I can't read all of them, but yeah, mouse gray is a cute color. So I have it. It's running on Heroku. It's run on Django. And it's just a little site that I use to not buy the same paint more than once. Prompt number 8 is zines. So this is an example of things that are coding adjacent. So here's several creators who use zines to teach about coding. Zines are kind of this kind of punk style way of communicating where you're using low-tech printing. Maybe you're using a copy machine, just simple black and white copies like with toner. Maybe you're using a silk screen. Some people will do fancier stuff and use a risograph, which is still kind of older technology, but a little more exclusive. You can also just make one digitally and distribute it as a PDF. And these can be done in lots of places, but one cool application is to teach about coding. So Julia Evans does these wizard zines, which are deeply technical, but very cute. So here's one that teaches about Linux. Sailor Mercury, who she's the creator behind Bubble Sort zines, does these kind of soft kawaii things about technical topics. And Code Art is it's kind of an open submission zine. The editor is Cy Brand, and they've released several different versions online. It's about coding or just things that are made with coding or poetry and art. It's really interesting. Prompt number 9 is to do something retro. So consider using an old school programming language. Maybe you could write something in BASIC, COBOL, Pascal, or C. These languages are a little rarer now, but they still have some really great fundamentals in it. Maybe you can make something that's new, but it still feels retro. So perhaps you use pixel art or use MIDI music, something that feels from a different decade. Hardware hacking, too, is a really great place. You might be a little more software adjacent. You're getting into physical devices, but there's often similar logic, and it can help reinforce your software. I have a friend from years ago who would make his own clocks out of like Nixie tubes and different things. And it's pretty interesting. So he would actually design the circuit board and do this. And it's kind of fun and whimsical. It's like just from a different era of technology. Prompt number 10 is to connect and get inspired. So a lot of just seeing who's out there can help you get inspired along this journey. And one of the things I love about the creative coding community is it just was like naturally a very diverse group of people. I just felt like I was meeting, there's gender diversity, there's people from different countries, from different races. It's just really awesome to see that it was just like naturally, hey, this is a really cool group of people, and everyone is bringing their own perspective and things to this. So I wanted to share some people I found and hope you'll find more. But first of all, Cassidy Williams is a developer experience expert. She's really into mechanical keyboards and has designed a few, like a Scrabble themed keyboard. You can follow her at cassidoo.co. Sailor Mercury goes like Sailor HG, which is a periodic table joke. She does the bubble sort zines and these kind of really delightful little, she made this computer that looks like an orange. It's so great. Cy Brand is the editor of the Code Art journal, and they also put together some really great educational short videos. I remember first meeting them when they presented about concurrency by feeding cats. So it's like, these are hardcore computer science topics taught in a really delightful way. More inspiring creators. From Asia, we have Naomi Wu. She's based in Shenzhen. She's a really inspiring woman who's very supportive of all women in tech. She does a lot of hardware hacking and 3D printing. She's got some, big personality and a lot of interesting creations. Analytical is the coding drag queen. So this person dresses in drag and teaches about coding and does CSS art that looks like famous Urban Decay makeup palettes. Cmyk Ikiani, I found this woman when I was looking up how to customize my terminal, and she's got a wealth of articles and blog posts about being in software and different technical topics. So very cool person to follow. A few more creators. Mina Markham. I wanted to share her work, but I couldn't get in touch with her. But check out her GitHub because she has a Beyonce themed terminal, custom terminal thing. It's just so funny and so creative. She's a front end engineer and designer, and she's also famous because she worked on Hillary Clinton's, I think, website design system. She created that. Julia Evans does the tech zines, and I've pictured her work again here. And Gabrielle Wee is like Illustrator software. She does really cool CSS art and has one of the most beautiful homepages I've ever seen. So these are just some fantastic creators that I've come across with and I'm sure there's so many more out there, but please support and follow these people. And yeah, that is basically creative coding. If you want to learn more, please check out the Git book that I'm working on. It is a living document. I'm updating it all the time. But my goal is to do go through one of these prompts every month with Women Who Code Tokyo or anyone, because it's online, it's open to anyone. And you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Stone Cold Kilzer. You can contact me. My email address is annkilzer@womenwhocode.com. Thank you so much for attending tonight's session. And please let me know if you have any questions. Yeah, need that orange computer. I know. Oh, yeah, I will share my slides on Twitter afterward, too. I know it was fast. I'm sorry. But, yeah.
Hi, Anne. Oh, yes. A lot of people were asking for the slides to get the links and all the resources. So that would be awesome.
I will share it right after this talk on Twitter. So just stay tuned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So make sure everyone to follow Anne on Stone Cold Kilzer. Also put the Twitter handle in the chat. Okay. Oh, you've got so many people commenting here.
Oh, I'm glad. This was a fun session, and I want to have. I just, one of the things I love about this is it's extremely collaborative. So I'm hoping to find more people interested in this. We can do it together.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I loved all of the resources that you shared. I was taking so many notes during your talk, and the slides are wonderful as well.
Yeah. If you're not on Twitter, I'll share it on LinkedIn too. Yeah, I can. Let's see.
Okay, so we have a question here from Brittany. So Brittany asked, what kind of topic could you see as a zine?
Yeah, as a zine or zine, there's different ways of pronouncing it, I guess. But yeah, I think I would just pick, you want it to be sort of compact or something, because you're going to have to draw or something. It might be something that you have to just start with a single concept. But I think it could really be anything. I mean, or if you want to teach something, if you want it to do educational, think about what do you do? What are you good at? Because I think everyone, I mean, one of the messages with Women Who Code is we really want everyone to feel empowered to share what they're doing and what they're good at. We did a speaker training cohort for this, and really it's just about everyone has something to teach. So maybe pick something something that you can share on, something you're learning, and just try to distill it. And maybe think about how you can visualize it too, because one of the aspects of a zine is it should be visual. It's not literature so much as it's more like a graphic novel, but like short form. So, and you don't have to draw. You can things you can do are, you could find some clip art or something and mix that in. You could cut up shapes and paste them in. If you're going to sell it or distribute it, don't get anything copyrighted. But Dover books have royalty-free stuff you can use as clip art for free for physical media. You could get a Dover book and you could use a couple images of get some technology stuff or somebody thinking, and then put that in with your text. Yeah.
Okay, so we have another question here from Bianca. So what form of traditional art do you feel translates the most to creative coding?
Oh, that's a really interesting question. I don't know. It's just a funny question for me too, because traditionally in my art, I like stuff that's really far from code. I was the person doing stone lithography in college or Japanese painting, but then I sort of in a way that what if I catalog my very physical media, which is ground rocks and meat glue. It's a binder, but I don't know. That's a really interesting question. I think if there's anything you can catalog or describe, that can be interesting. Sometimes it is fun if you get something really old tech and make it feel like if you did something about typography and you made it feel like an old letterpress, that would be really interesting, but it would be a challenge. So I don't know if there's one right answer to that, but I think it's a really cool space to explore, and I like that question. But I'm going to leave it to you. let's share what you find and blend your traditional art with tech.
Oh, okay. Yeah, with many people saying thanks, and yeah, I guess that brings us to the end then. They were great questions. Thank you both very much for asking. So yeah, thank you. Oh, we have actually another question here from Anna before we finish. So Anna asked, how do you discover all these amazing creators?
Yeah, I think I sort of met some over time on Twitter. And then I think I was just Googling more creative coding. And then I think CodePen is a really good place for it. But then when I started, like, just making this session has helped me because I'm like, I want to customize my terminal. Who else has done that? And that's how I met like that Cmyk, that author, because she had written all these really good tutorials about it. So you're like, I want to do this, and I want to add more color to, and you'll find people that have written, and some people have gotten into like a lot of depth in it, and then you're like, oh, okay, this person's interesting. Or I think I had heard of Cassidy Williams, but then I saw, oh, she has a private Discord that you can join for supporting her Patreon. And then it's full of people who are like really nice. And so, yeah, sometimes you can interact or just ask people questions. Because I was working on something too, I reached out to Sally Lay. I was like, can I get your help with this? And she was super supportive, and she pointed me to other people that were doing, I think, just networking and yeah, being open to learning from other people really helps.
Okay, we have one more question. That was really a great answer. And Tan asks here, oh, great talk. More about Zines, or Zines, magazine.
Yeah,
Zine.
I think it's either way because it's magazine. But yeah,
Zine,
I don't know.
yeah.
Zine sounds kind of cool too. But
Yeah.
I think
So
for this, I actually like the old tech way. I mean, you could use something like your iPad and some drawing software like Procreate, or something like, you could do it in MS Paint if you still have that. That could be fun, but like, I keep it a little old school with the zines. So PDF is maybe about as fresh as I'd get, because then you can distribute it easily, but there's nothing wrong with doing it. Actually, I just got a used laser copier with the like copy printer, and it has toner, and I'm like so excited for it because I think I just like that kind of toner feel. It has like a nice technology, but then I would want to scan it and be able to upload and share with people. But yeah, I don't know so much about software for making zines. You could try LaTeX. That would be actually another old weird one, but that's like a famous academic copy typesetting software that is pretty popular in academia. But that'll make you a document. Yeah.
And here's the last question.
Cool.
Okay, Anne, how did you get into creative coding? That's a great question.
Oh, how did I get in, or how does one get into creative coding?
I think how does one? Both? Yeah, both.
Both.
Answer
Okay,
both.
so I think if you want to get into it, join the hashtag creative coding in the Women Who Code Slack. Join us and just start following along. I've linked to a bunch of other creators and tutorials, and they will, if you go through the material, you can learn how to do CSS art. You can learn how to do, and you find something that speaks to you, because there's not one right answer to it. But I think just don't be afraid to make mistakes, or like intentionally make mistakes. Don't try to make like a perfect thing, and just, it's okay to make a weird thing. It's okay to make an AI that's kind of broken. I think if you just keep an open mind and try to do things, what can I do differently? I think that'll help you. For me, I think I always really liked creative things, and I actually always saw math and computer science as a creative activity. People think that's weird. Oh, they're so different. But when I solve math proofs, often you have to think of like, what are different solutions, and you have to be creative with wait, what if I try this, or what if I try this? And when I'm drawing too, it's like solving a problem sometimes. I'm like, wait, I'm supposed to draw, the nose is crooked, or I have to adjust. So I think there's sort of a technicality and, adaptability, sort of like mental agility in a lot of things. And I don't see it as one or the other. I just see it as, this is how we like interact with the world. So yeah, for me, it just came very naturally. But again, like, don't be afraid of it if you don't have an art background. I think anyone can learn this. Yeah.
I love that. You shared so many resources, and everyone, just a reminder that Anne is going to be sharing her slides on her Twitter page, which
Twitter, and I'll share it on my LinkedIn as well for people who do not have Twitter. But yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Thank you for delivering an amazing talk and sharing all about creative coding. Like I said, I took many notes, and a lot of people in the chat were so inspired and learned a lot from your talk today as well. So yeah, I can't wait to spend some time and check them out. And yeah, and Jocelyn also said there are so many fun ideas in this talk, and I totally agree with you in that, Jocelyn. But yeah, so the next talk will be starting in 7 minutes. Again, thank you, Anne, and thank you everyone who joined Anne's talk today as well. Bye, everyone.